ועתה יש להבין מה שאמרו דאיהו בנצח. Now, let's understand the other part of the statement that he is in Netzach, because we explained the concept of that she is in Hod, meaning that Malchus has bittul, essentially. So what does it mean that he is in Netzach? That it's known and explained in Eitz Chaim, become a duchti in a number of places. The Netzach v'Hod Zah, from Netzach and Hod of Zeranpin. Mehem nimshach muchin lenukva, that from them is drawn the, so to speak, brains to nukva. The main hamshacha from Zah to nukva is the mochin. V'nikra Netzach v'Hod rein shokin, and Netzach and Hod of Zeranpin are called the two thighs, the two legs, dilabar migufa, that are outside the body, so to speak. They're what comes from above to below. Therefore, they're, so to speak, outside of the body itself, because they're part of the hamshacha. V'hein b'chinas chitzonius Netzach v'Hod. They're the concept of the external concept of Netzach and Hod, v'aklayos yotzos, and the kidneys that advise in bechinas pnimis to Netzach v'Hod. They're the inner concept of Netzach and Hod. So the actual hashpa, the two legs are like the external part of Netzach and Hod, whereas the two kidneys are like, so to speak, the inner part of Netzach and Hod. Mispashtin v'nimshachin betrein bein disod duchurchu, and they spread out and are drawn into the two testes of Yisod and of the masculine. They correspond with the concept. So the two sides of the kidneys are the inner Netzach and Hod that come into the two testes, which also correspond with Netzach and Hod, which is, so to speak, balancing the flow that's going to be given. So, for example, a person's thighs. That a person, so to speak, doesn't need them when they're sitting at all. That when they're sitting well. Their main function is to move. So you don't need, when you do not need to go from place to place, so you don't need them, so to speak. But when you need to go from one place to another, then you need your legs and your thighs to bring you there. So it's found then that the thighs are only servants to the body, and not the main concept of the body itself. So too, in every flow from one source to another, bechinas Netzach v'Hod and bechinas klayos yotzos, the concept of Netzach and Hod are these kidneys that advise eich lahashpia, how to give the flow, and they're only when a person wants to give a flow to their friend. But when a person does not want to give anything over in tzarich lehem klal, you do not need them. Mash'en kinguf etzem hashefa, which is not the case with the body of the essence of the flow itself. What's actually given over is the concept of chagas. They're called the body of it. And the Netzach v'Hod, they're how to give that over, how to bring that from place to place. So for example, the love in the heart. He etzem hashpa is the essence of the flow, And how do you express this love in speech? It's through these kidneys that advise, so to speak. And they are called the Netzach and Hod. So if that's the case, so you cannot compare at all the main concept of the flow, which is Chesed Gvur Tiferes, L'masha ba mehen bebechinas Giloi b'Netzach v'Hod, to that which comes in a revealed state in them, in Netzach and Hod, Hamevid u'mamshichim lidei Giloi, which bring and draw down in a revealed state, Shinekra Klei Hashpach, that are called the vessels of this flow. And this is what it states in the Zohar, the Netzach v'Hod nikra Badei Rovos, that Netzach and Hod are called the sprigs of willow. Rovos, just like the willow, shein behem tam v'reach, that do not have any taste or smell. Kach b'Netzach ein bo rak ha'arada ha'ara ba'alma. So too, in Netzach, there's only a glimmer of a glimmer alone. Me'etzem midas ha'chesed, from the essence of the attribute of kindness, right? Even though the Netzach is on the side of chesed, chochma chesed Netzach, the Netzach itself only has a glimmer from this chesed that it comes from. Ha'avash b'such halev, and from this love that's in the heart, chulu. Yuvan b'yozel derech mashlim, we can explain this, for example, and nitzuach ba'adam, the conquering in a person. Shemenatzeach es atzmo, that a person, so to speak, conquers themselves. La'ohuv eze davar, to love something. She'en b'nitzuach ze amiti sa'ava, k'moshi b'libo, that this type of overcoming oneself is not true love as it is in the heart. Rather, a person conquers themselves and forces themselves to this love. And that's the concept of this attribute of victory, which comes from kindness. That you, so to speak, force yourself to love something. Maybe when you're not interested in something, but you do it anyways, and you know you want to do it intellectually, so you force yourself, even though you don't feel emotion for it yet, or at the time, or it's a forced emotion. Like it's explained the concept at length in another place. And what's allegorized for this can be understood for the thinker above Masha Amru, the statement, the Iu b'Netzach, that he, the masculine, is in Netzach. The minamidos chagas te'atzilus atzman, from the attributes of chesed gvur tiferes of atzilus themselves. Malchus cannot receive from them directly during a weekday. Because there, the lights and the life force are still in the essence of Atzilus. So, for example, the love in the heart of a person. That you cannot bring it to a revealed state as it truly is in the heart. Only through the expressions as they're dictated through Netzach and Hod of Zir Anpin alone, that's how they come out into a revelation of light and flow into Malchus, the Atzilus of Atzilus, like allegorically in a person. Because Netzach and Hod are only the vessels for the flow, to bring this flow to a revealed state. And already in them, the light is contracted very much, like this conquering, that the love is in a very hidden state when a person conquers themselves. And that's the statement that he is in Netzach. That is to say, the one who's giving the flow, which is Za of Atzilus, all the lights of its flow come only through this concept of Netzach, not giving the whole thing, not the love itself, but so to speak, the effort to give it over, the effort to express it. Like the pasuk, also the Netzach of Israel will not lie. Which is only a branch or a glimmer alone from this kindness. And similarly, we can explain that she is in Hod as well. That Malchus only goes up to Hod and not further. That meaning to say it's only a glimmer. Before we explain the concept of Hod being the concept of bittul, how Malchus expresses the bittul. But also, we can say that Malchus only gets from Hod. It doesn't get from higher. It calls it Biomin Dechol, and all of this is during the weekdays. That now we're referencing the concept of flow into the worlds in general, from the midos of Hashem into the worlds. And it's known that during the weekday, it's different than on Shabbos. So when do you get this flow that's lessened? During the weekdays. That the flow of the higher levels, that the mochin, the brain, so to speak, of the feminine aspect, are only from Netzach and Hod of Ziranpi. But on Shabbos, the Malchus receives the mochin, this essential flow from the concept of Chesed Gvur Tiferes of Ziranpin Atzman, from themselves, from those midos themselves. And that's the meaning of the statement, you should break through on the right and the left, meaning to say on both the Netzach and the Hod, now break through, you get straight forward, straight from Chesed, straight from Gvura, not through Netzach and Hod. Like the statement, from the right and from the left, and between them is the bride of Shabbos, and between them is the Chesed itself and the Gvura itself. And on Shabbos, Malchus goes up higher, to receive from Chabad of Ziranpin, as is known. Now, even though Netzach and Hod themselves are the last concept in Ziranpin, nonetheless, this ability to give birth, so to speak, to give in a revealed state, comes from a very high place, even though it's the lowest level of Zah. That this ability to give this flow comes from Keser, because this extra ability that Netzach Hod has in order to shine below comes from an even higher glimmer than Chachma Bina Das of Zerampin themselves. Even then, we can understand this. This that we see clearly, Kain Betino Cotton, with a small child, Ben Shana, that's a year old, that cannot travel or walk on its legs yet. Even though it has intellect to understand all things, and it can also speak a number of things. But nonetheless, it cannot go on its legs until it's around 2 years old. And even more. That is because the thighs, even though they are only servants and less secondary to the main part of the body, nonetheless, you cannot walk on them until the intellect has truly come into the mind of the child in a complete way. Dafka specifically. That is when you have this glimmer of Keser into the brains of Chochmah Bina Das, which is called the great mind. Meaning to say there's 3 levels of flow. There's Ibur, which is the concept of pregnancy, Yenika, which is the concept of nursing, and Gadlus, which is the greatness. So and that's actually about when the child weans, because the Yenika, just the nurturance, ends, and then it gets a higher level coming into it from Keser, because the Ibur is like Chagas within Nehi. Yenika is like Chabad to Chagas, and Muchin, the Gadlus, I guess, is Keser to the Muchin. Vas Chalas Knisas Muchin, the Gadlus, and the beginning of the entrance of these great brains, Maschil Mebeis Shanim, that begins at 2 years old, Ad Shenishlimu Legamre, until they're complete. Biosu Ben Esrim, when a person is 20 years old, like it says in another place. There's a Maamar about it in Torah, or Likutei Torah. The Makifi Abba, I think. That is when you complete the brains of the nurturance. Like at the end of 2 years or a little bit less. And at first glance, this idea is very wondrous. How can this lesser thing be dependent, the concept of walking, how can it be dependent on the main essence of the concept, which is the essence of the soul, the Keser? But this concept can be understood from a full vessel. When it gets full, more than its measure, that's when it overflows on its boundaries and drips all the way down. Similarly, when the encompassing light of the soul from the crown comes in, then you have this extra, so to speak, external ability come out. And so to speak, overflows all the way down to the bottom. Which is this ability to walk through tafele bar megufa canal, which is secondary, subservient to the and outside the body, like we explained. Bedugma, and similarly with an example, Zos, with this example, so the intellectual can understand above. Bebechinas netzach vehod zeranpin, with netzach and hod of zah, kishiyuchlu lashpia uleholid amshachos oros umuchin chadashim, when they're able to give the flow and to give birth to new lights and mochin into malchus, shubah mitzad knisas amochin degadlus bezah and bechinas hakeser. That's because you have the going in of the great mochin, the great mind of zah from keser. That's when you can have the hashpah of netzach and hod into malchus. Vayuvan. We can understand further b'mashal latinok, with this allegory of the child. Shari anuroim kishigdal od, that when the child grows even more, v'yihya ben tes shani, when it's 9 years old, shuroi laholid, and can then inseminate and be part of the process of giving birth to a child, b'nihi shubo, with its netzach hod yisod. It's then fitting for flow downwards, lefish az nishlam zman hagadlus yoseh, because that's when the greatness, the concept of keser as it comes into the mochin of zah, is more complete. Kidu as is known. V'adugma mizeh yuvan l'mayla, and the likeness of this can be understood spiritually above. Shebichinas told us haneshamus memayin dechurin deziranpin, that the birth of the souls from the masculine waters of Ziranpin, that comes from the concept of Netzach Hod Yesod of Ziranpin, that's because you have the concept of greatness, or gadlus, of mochin, more into Zah. That's when the neshamas give birth. So just like 9 years old. And a child. Below. And that's like the meaning of Nishmona Esrei Kel Elyon, who does great good kindnesses and acquires all. Perish Kel Elyon. So what's Kel Elyon? Hu bechinas ha'aras ha'keser. This refers to the light from Keser, Shnekra Kel Elyon, which is called the high the high divinity, Shemeir Bezah, that shines into Ziranpin. That's the Keser we're talking about. Vukone HaKol, and it acquires all. So Kol, Shebechinas Yisod Nikra Kol. Yisod is called Kol, so it acquires the Yisod. It's meaning to say it's able to give the flow downwards because of this Kel Elyon, this Hamshachas HaKeser. Like it says, Ki Kol Bashamayim Chul. Like we say, in Vayvarach David, that all in the heavens and the earth, that unites the heavens and the earth. That's the concept of the Yisod, to unite the heavens, the Zah, into the earth, the concept of Malchus. Visha told them, because the giving birth from the concept of Netzach Hod Yisod is dependent specifically with the light of Keser, b'mochin canal that shines into the intellectual levels. B'moshel, like we said, allegorically, with a child. And that's the concept of, and he brings a redeemer to the sons of their sons. And what does it mean, the sons of their sons? That is the sons of the sons. that this that gives birth from the concept of Nihi, of Zah, that's their sons. The Zah itself is, so to speak, what gives the flow to the children. Umash mistaifim, and what comes from those flows themselves, Od Lamanta, even further down, Nikra B'nei B'neihem. That's called the sons of their sons. Now I know the Arizal says B'nei B'neihem is the concept of Nihi itself. The Banim might be Chagas, and B'nei B'neihem is the Nihi. But here he explains it a little different, where the sons are what comes from Nihi, and B'nei B'neihem is the flow from those things themselves that come from Nihi. That is to say, until the souls of Israel that are in the heels. It calls them Mipnei, and all of this is because Shekel Elyon Nigla B'Zir Anpin, that Kel Elyon, the concept of Keser, is revealed into Zah. And according to this preface, Hariyuv and Lamaila, we can understand above Be'inyan B'chinas Netzach Vod Zir Anpin, with the concept of Netzach and Hod of Zah. Keshaba Mihem B'chinas Tulda, when it comes from them, the concept of a flow downwards, giving birth from Netzach and Hod. Agam Shehim B'china Ha'achron, even though they are the lowest levels. Mikomokum Shorshim B'chinas HaKeser, nonetheless their root comes from the concept of Keser B'holadazu, in this giving birth. V'zeu she'amru Rizal B'nei Chai Chulu La B'zchus Atalia, that children and life, mizuna and sustenance, are not dependent upon your merit. El b'mazla talia, but they're dependent upon the mazel. Pirush mazla, what does it mean, the mazel? Zeh hainu b'mazla darich anpin, with the mazel of arich. Shebechinas ora keser shemeir b'zer anpin, which is the light of keser, which shines into zah. That's the mazel. That's why it's dependent upon something higher. Look what it says, explaining Netzach and Hod. Am Natseach, meaning from the Lashon Netzach. So now back to the concept in the Maamar, that Yehonathan says to David, Machar Chodesh v'nifkarata, that tomorrow will be the month and you'll be remembered. V'nifkarata, what does it mean, and you will be remembered? Like remembering the barren women, that they should be able to give birth. Because Malchus of Bria is then, so to speak, remembered with a union and a marriage. Like a person has to remember his wife, be with his wife before he goes out to travel. It's a concept of union. So tomorrow will be the new month, and you'll have this union. Told us his chadshus haneshamos, and that is in order to have the birth of renewal of souls. Yesh mind, something from nothing. And bechinas yisod zah, from yisod of ziranpin, which is, like we said, Yehonathan, the bria of the world of bria. And the root of this concept of remembrance, Maila comes from very high. That is the light of the crown, Hanikra Mazla, which is called the Mazla, like we said in Kel Elyon. Like our sages said, that children and life and sustenance are dependent upon the Mazel, the concept of Keser. Look in Eitz Chaim, the Gid of Rosh Hashanah, there it implies that Rosh Chodesh comes from the light of Netzach of Arich. And in the Siddur Ari, in the preface to Musaf also. So, but if it comes from Netzach Avarich, there you have it. The concept of Keser and Netzach from Keser. Netzach within Keser itself, even. Right? Mashkaz od minyan Netzach al pasuk va Netzach zu Yerushalayim b'dibar maskal tzidkas pirzono ubi abir shal yedei Netzach. Look what it says about the concept of Netzach is Yerushalayim. And that it's tzedakah we were spread out. And the explanation, where it explains that through Netzach we draw down the revelation of the treasures of the hidden of all hiddens. Which is the concept of the head which is not known and the hidden brains. The levels in Keser, again, so through Netzach you draw down through Keser. Kitzer, so in short, Inyan Yehonathan behei, we explain the concept of Yehonathan with a hey, Inyan David, in the concept of David. The Inyan Ihi behod, the Inyan Ihu benetzach, we explain the concept that she is in Hod, and the concept that he is in Netzach. Vishen Netzach vehod, Im Yos in the bar megufa, and that Netzach and Hod, even though they are, so to speak, outside the body, Shursh and Gavor Ma'od, they really have a high source, and high root. And this is the concept of you will be remembered just like it says that Hashem remembered Sarah. That Sarah should give birth to Yitzchak. Also, so that implies in that story that in order for Sarah to give birth to Yitzchak, she had to have Hamshacha of Keser. Whatever the concept of Sarah is, as well. Either it's Bina or Malchus. Look what it says. Who placed a mouth for man? And the concept of jumping from in the Shir Hashirim, where it's the concept of the flow that comes directly from Keser and jumps all the way to Malchus.